Well, I wanted to follow up on the BBC that I did a few days ago about the exchange between Venerable and some students regarding depression, that is a form of laziness, and how to counteract that. And her using a wonderful analogy of when we get depressed, we're inviting them in for brownies into our mind and tea and things like that. So during the retreat, I had to deal with it in a kind of a direct way. So I wanted to share, and hoping that it would be helpful, my journey with this particular misery-making mental state. And in hopes to share that how powerful the Dharma has been in helping to really begin to eradicate it as a major source of suffering in my life. I did want to preempt this by saying that there's a lot of wonderful therapeutic and pharmacological tools in the world that really help people deal with depression. I just happened, for whatever reason, not to utilize them. So I was never in therapy. I didn't take antidepressants, and I didn't go to counseling and things like that. I kind of struggled with it all my life until I met the Dharma. So one of the first understandings that kind of helped me put my depression in context is that how karma rules the day, that all virtuous and non-virtuous actions, no matter how habituated they are, these patterns of thinking that just, when we come in, they're just there. I mean, babies come in they're not blank slates when we're born, and that they put these latencies, these seeds, these imprints on our mind, and that when we're born, depending on how strong they are, they kind of come in with us. So from the very get-go, when I was a small little girl, I came in with a sad mind. There are pictures of me when I was a little child, and I had the most melancholy face. I mean, I was just a sad child. And that we all come into life with some luggage. That's what I kind of see these things, these mental factors, these predispositions. Now, some of the luggages, small bags, carry-ons, they're kind of light, they're sturdy. But some of them are huge trunks and boxes wrapped with duct tape that say heavy, say fragile. And for me, this depression was one of those heavy boxes with duct tape that said, fragile, be careful, and it's very, very heavy. And that the completing karma that I had here I was having this beautiful throwing karma of having a human life, but the completing karma put me into a family situation that was fairly tough from the get-go, which I think contributed to this sad proclivity to begin with, this melancholy, this depression. And in the 60s, there wasn't much treatment for young children and teens, at least I didn't know of any, and my family's basic medicine was get over it, which didn't really help. So some of the characteristics of this, the depression of mine, kind of wanting to identify it, it's important to label and name this stuff, to kind of take the mystery out of it. So there was a sense of isolation, loneliness, a lot of self-hatred, self-loathing, this negative obsessive thinking, an oversensitivity, and an inability to feel connected to others, a withdrawal, a lethargy, kind of a foggy, heavy, rainy, stormy kind of mind. And that's kind of what a lot of my mind was as I was growing up. Now, as an adult where I had a little bit more freedom to deal with this, I had a few coping skills. First one is to just numb myself, okay? So some serious drug taking, some serious alcohol, reading books that provided me with a kind of escape, so that I could go back and create this sort of inner world, whether it was science fiction or fantasy or fairy tales or dramas and things like that. I could go into these books that I could totally just withdraw and numb myself with a type of inner world that was just a lot better than what I was experiencing in my life. The other thing that I would do is that I would try to snap out of it. And one of the ways that I did this is that I started doing some really risky and reckless behavior. I might have had a lot of promiscuity. I was associated with people who really lived on the edge. I mean, there was this real adrenaline rush. And when I had the adrenaline rush, this depression wasn't so strong. And I was kind of wild. I did try some people pleasing and anticipating other people's needs, but that didn't go very far and that didn't last very long. So most of the time, I welcomed the depression back into my mind and gave it some brownies. Sometimes I fed it a 5-course meal. I mean, I was just so familiar with this mind. And there was a part of me that wanted it to be fixed. You know, when Venerable, when she did this exchange regarding this in that talk, she said, there's part of us that wants to look outside of ourselves and have somebody fix us, somebody save us. And that was a huge piece, which was a dilemma because I felt myself pretty worthless. I felt myself pretty unlovable. So there was somewhat of a conundrum there. And when I wasn't depressed, I was really pissed off. And I remember specifically this exchange I had many, many years ago where I was, struggling with it once again, and I had been wanting to put my art in a very prestigious art exhibit in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It was considered one of those places, a juried show. If you got in, you were considered to be getting along the path there. So I entered my artwork, and I was accepted. And the notice came in the mail, and I looked at it, and I kind of just walked away, and my roommate said, "You have a really hard time experiencing joy, don't you?" And I got so furious with her because she had made an honest appraisal that here was something that I really, really wanted, and at the same time, I just couldn't acknowledge the joy. I didn't know how to feel it. I didn't know what to do with that. It was almost too good to be true. And so I had a few of those things happen in my life where someone would point out this proclivity, and I would get really, really angry because it was like they were uncovering something that I was not willing to look at or too comfortable, too familiar to look at. So that was one of the many times. And so by the time I was in my 30s, I had this major identity going. I mean, I was a depressed person. That was who I was. There was never any question. There was never any interest in challenging it. It was who I was. So then comes 1997, I was 41. And that's when the Dharma came into my life. The first teaching from Venerable was Precious Human Life that I ever took in. It was in Seattle. And I was so puzzled because when she laid it out, I was saying to myself, well, I have this. I have all my parts. I have my abilities. I have a roof over my head. I have the Dharma. I have strong interest in it. I've got Dharma friends. I've got this wonderful teacher. I mean, this person's amazing. How can that be? I'm depressed. It was the first time where there was this shaking up on the deep side of this depression. And then that depression started to get treated with very, very powerful medicines of the Dharma. Not only was it Precious Human Life, but the teachings on refuge, the teaching on the kindness of others, the teachings on bodhicitta, the teachings on emptiness, the teachings on dependent arising, Buddha nature, joyous effort. It was like this little flickering of hope started to emerge in my mind. It was like, can this be true? I mean, there was this real sense that finally this something about who I thought I was being challenged in this very beautiful way. One of the most powerful medicines, and I have to say one of the hardest medicines to swallow even today, is the teachings on identifying and really looking at the disadvantages of self-centered thought. I mean, I was really horrified when I got it. That depression was total self-preoccupation, total self-obsession. That I was depressed as long as and in that depression, I saw the world through this very, very little pinhole, just teeny, teeny, teeny. And I looked at my problems with a really big one of those telescopes or microscopes, so that it takes in and just zooms in. So all my little problems became these major tragedies. My depression was all about me, the center of the universe. And to see that what this self-centered thought was telling me were all lies, or as Venerable said in that teaching that night, whacked out inappropriate tension. Everything that it was saying about me was untrue. That I can't do anything about it, so why do I try? Which is where the laziness comes in. And I'm so worthless. So I started to see this. It was a hard medicine, and I remember sometimes Venerable teaching on the self-centered thought in that building over there, and I would sit there, Venerable Tarpa, I just squirm. I would just squirm because she was nailing it. She was just telling us this is misery-making, and that the thought of cherishing others is the most powerful antidote to this self-centered thought. And sometimes it still makes me squirm when I'm in this particular place. And that I was so infatuated with my own sad story because it gave me such a strong sense of I, me, my, and mine. And that this went on for 41 years. Came in from who knows how long. So 17 years later, I'm still dealing with it. I mean, it's a chronic disease. But I take my medicine, the disadvantages of self-centered thought, the sweet-tasting medicine of the kindness of others, bodhicitta, powerful medicine of dependent arising, emptiness, which I may have to take for the rest of my life, but that's okay. As chronic as this is, I'm just not going to say it's going to probably be over this life, but that there's some very, very powerful medicine. And that it's taking time because it's a huge illness in this life, and it's coming from due to the ignorance that's supporting it underneath. So it's like, I'm not going to be able to totally eliminate it, but I'm sure getting a good handle on it to where I'm, not letting them in. I haven't locked the door yet, but the brownies are kind of stale, or they're just, don't taste as good as they used to be. And that I then see the analogy of the doctor, the medicine, and the nurses. That the Buddha is the doctor in regards to this particular state of mind for me. And that is, he's kind of diagnosed that this is a case of profound ignorance. And that's what's underlying this. But there is a cure. And the Dharma is the cure. And between Venerable and all these wonderful teachers we have that come here, I mean, there's a plethora of wonderful nurses. So I really feel that this mind that I have struggled with all of my life has really gotten to be a curable disease. And I'm really overjoyed. I can see that, and as a result, my mind turns towards others. The thought of cherishing others, of the kindness, of the intense gratitude of how profound and how potent this medicine is. And it was very helpful for me to do this because I have never acknowledged that I have been depressed. This whole retreat gave me this opportunity to say, it's okay to label this, Semkye, because you're so far along that you can look at it now and say, you spent most of your life depressed. Suicide, whatever, all that stuff. And now you're sort of far enough away from it because of the Dharma, because of the kindness of your teachers and the kindness of your Dharma friends and your precious human life, you're really getting a handle on it. So I'm not saying that it's the only medicine that some folks can take, but for this particular sentient being, this has been the most potent medicine as far as depression goes. And so whatever help that may be, I hope that would be able to offer some support.